right, I'm going to show you how to set up cross coverage or Jeopardy in your resident or fellowship schedule. In the on-call application, go to your block schedule and click on one of the rotations that will be offering cross coverage. So in this example, I'm going to click geriatrics for my first year, block 1. In my info box, there is a drop-down selector that is for cross coverage. Select the middle option for cross cover. Click the box next to it to open up this next window. At this point, you'll need to click the setup to first set up which rotations offer and use cross coverage. So in the middle, I'm going to say that my wards offer or will use cross coverage and my ICU will use cross coverage. And as far as which rotations offer, I'll just select a few from this list. Okay. So I have a list of which ones offer, which ones we'll use, and when you're done, click OK. Now, ready to start indicating who gets different coverage. You'll see here when I clicked on ambulatory, it automatically plugged in cross coverage for wards. In my window here, it says cross cover to wards. Let me open up that window. My ward window cross cover is a red circle. My ICU would be a blue square. So by having that preset, all I have to do is click on the rotation. It will plug it in for me. It's a little shortcut. But if you open up the window, you can be more descriptive on who gets what. So this one got the ICU. This intern has ward coverage. This allows me to be very specific who's covering for which service. In my same cross coverage window, there are these check boxes in the upper right. It's referring to that if they're both checked, that resident is the coverage resident for the entire block. If you uncheck one, then it allows me to say they're only the Jeopardy resident for the first half or the second half of the block. Okay, so I still have it on wards. Let's go down to my residents. I'm going to make Armstrong my ward resident that covers. And then let's go down to Lambie. Let's make Lambie actually instead of wards, let's make him ICU. Okay. Now that I've established my cross covers, and by the way, if you don't see these markers on your schedule, go to your view menu and make sure your cross cover markers is enabled. Next, let's go to the call. Let's pretend that Dr. Biaz on the ward resident is not going to be able to work on July 4th, and I need to put in the Jeopardy resident that will be covering. When I click that cell, my info box is giving me my team summary of residents that can work the ward service, but it's also pulling in the resident that has been designated as the Jeopardy resident for wards. So it's bringing in Dr. Armstrong. I can also see this because I see that red circle icon indicating ward coverage. Now, if I select Dr. Armstrong to cover Dr. Biaz, you'll want to consider if this particular service has a call or shift pattern, because in this case, this service has a Q4 call pattern, meaning the resident is on every fourth night until the resident goes off. If I turn on my highlighter, you'll see Dr. Biaz is scheduled as such until the rotation switch. So if I put Dr. Armstrong in there, you'll see that it replaced Dr. Armstrong on the same pattern, assuming that he's covering the whole block. So if that is not the case, pay attention to that. Let me undo that entry. If they're only covering for a particular day or two, go to options and disable your autofill call to disable your pattern. And now when I click on Armstrong, it just replaces the one day I select. So maybe Dr. Armstrong is going to cover for two days, 2 call days or a week for Dr. Biaz. Now, something that's not part of cross-covering that you may want to establish is to turn on track changes. That's these little circle icons. So let me know that Armstrong switched with Biaz. Biaz was the ward resident. And that is done by clicking on a date cell at the top and click track changes. You store that current month schedule, and then any changes you make, it will track for you. If I want to show where Dr. Armstrong is covering from, right-click on the service that you've scheduled them onto And in the menu, choose Show Where People Cross-Cover From, and you'll see little symbols coming in. Now, if you want to change what symbols appear, right-click on it and set the abbreviation to what you do want. Maybe I want to say ambulatory care spelled out. Okay. Now, same for my ICU. I can see that Dr. Lambie is the cross cover, and I'm just going to have him replace that one day. Now, I may want to show where people cross cover from my wards, and I don't have to for my ICU. They do act independent, so I don't have to turn it on there. All right. And that is generally how cross coverage works for a resident or fellowship schedule. Now, here are some other scenarios that you could possibly do for a setup. Let's go back to the block schedule. You may have that your Jeopardy resident intern covers any call or shift assignment that needs covered, not particular ones. And so let's add in something generic like Jeopardy. So I'm going to go to my general setup window and type in a Jeopardy service, tie it to my call because that's where I want it to show up. And I'm going to establish who is my Jeopardy resident. So let's say, let me take off this geriatrics here. And let's go to the setup and put Jeopardy as one of my options and put Davy as my Jeopardy resident from geriatrics. And I'm going to pick on, let's pick on Dr. Casey and Larson. Well, let's do Larson. He'll work better. Okay. So now I've established who is my Jeopardy person. Let's take this one off. That works for me. Let's go back to our call schedule. Now, you'll notice if I click into an assignment, my Infobox team summary is not going to bring in my generic Jeopardy cross-covering resident. It's only bringing the one I tied to wards. But if you're not tying it to a particular service, you would not see your cross-cover resident in the team summary view. Okay, so in order to get them to appear, you'll go to your All Staff view, look for your cross-cover marker that represents the Jeopardy resident. In this case, I can see clearly who it is, and then you can select to put that person in. Okay. The other option too, if you're using a generic Jeopardy, is a lot of programs want to list the Jeopardy resident intern on the actual call or shift schedule as an assignment. So you'll want to make sure it's listed as a service when I've already added Jeopardy to be on the call schedule here. I'm going to set up this Jeopardy to, just like I would any of my other call or shift services. In the Infobox window, I'm going to say how many lines I need. I'm going to give a name to be a little bit more descriptive. This would be my Jeopardy resident. And then I have a Jeopardy intern. Also, how is the Jeopardy resident intern staffed? You can create a custom call pattern. You can set it to variable if there is no pattern. You can choose one of our preset patterns. I'm going to choose Q1 call. What Q1 call means is that it's the same person every day until that resident goes off the rotation. And that's what I want in this scenario. Next is I'm going to say who can staff it. My resident will be my 2s and 3s, and my 1s for my interns. And you can go do more setup with setting the hours and so forth. But in this case, I'm ready to fill it in. Now, if I click into July 1st, my team summary is pulling in who I've assigned as my Jeopardy resident. And in this case, it's Dr. Larson covering from elective, and I can see my marker. Now, if you recall, I had turned off my autofill. So with it off, it's not going to follow my Q1 pattern. So make sure if that was the scenario, turn on your pattern fill so it can fill it in every day till that resident goes off. Same with my intern. Okay. And so if this is something you are doing, another thing you might want to consider is our auto scheduler to fill in your Jeopardy, because we clearly know whom should be staffing Jeopardy on a block by block basis. If you haven't used our auto scheduler, I highly recommend you check it out. We do have a help page for the auto scheduler. I'm going to open it up, and You can set this, I recommend the whole academic year. I have my resident Jeopardy service selected and I click apply. Let's do my intern. So in 2 clicks, I can have my whole Jeopardy filled out on my call schedule for the whole academic year. Okay. I may want to show where they're cross-covering from, so I'll turn that on. And there you go. You may want to not show the Jeopardy on the daily Who's on Call list that's published at MION. So if that is the case, right-click on the service name and unselect the Include on Who's On list to hide that from the daily view. All right, that is pretty much how it works to set up the call schedule. Let's see what it looks like for the residents viewing the schedule. So I'm going to go ahead and publish this to MION. Let's take a quick look. All right, so on the daily view, we are not going to see the Jeopardy resident information on who's on for today because we chose to hide it. Let's go to the block schedule. The block schedule will show those markers, and there is a legend at the bottom that explains it in case anyone prints this off. Okay. Now, if I view somebody's personal schedule, let's do a Dr. Armstrong. So I'm going to go to my PGY2 and Dr. Armstrong. Let's go to block 1. So I can, as Dr. Armstrong, I clearly see that in block 1, I am the Jeopardy resident for wards. In block 1, when I'm on ambulatory, I get the marker there. It's letting me know when I mouse over it what it means. And down below is my day-to-day schedule. And as you can see in this example, it's letting me know that I'm the ward resident on the 4th and on the 8th, the 2 days that I'm set up as the coverage resident while on ambulatory. So it clearly lets me know where I'm expected to be. Now, if we pick on, let's go to a resident that is on the generic Jeopardy. So it looks like we have Dr. Larson. Let's go to him. He is a PGY2 as well. Dr. Larson. Let's go to block 1. So in this example, we place Dr. Larson on the Jeopardy call service. And so his daily schedule is showing him on call as Jeopardy resident while on the elective rotation. So that's kind of the difference in some programs are totally fine with that and some would prefer it the other way. Now, if we look at the 6, it's letting us know that he's on the wards call and he's Jeopardy and while on the elective rotation. So this would stand out to Dr. Larson that yes, he's on call for Jeopardy and yes, he is actually covering the ward resident service that day versus the other days he's just on call for Jeopardy, not actually on a service. So that's kind of the 2 different examples that you'll get there. All right, if you have any questions about setting up your cross coverage, please reach out to MION support. We're happy to assist you. Go to support@mion.com. Thank you.